Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for Monday, August 3rd. Could we have the roll call?
Roll call?
Please?
Okay, sure. Mark Vanneman.
Here.
Bruce Pauley.
Here.
Chad Kiger.
Here.
Ron Edwards.
Here.
And Lori Gross. Here.
Okay, we got a quorum tonight. Has everybody looked at the minutes, and are there any questions or concerns there?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
Second the motion.
Okay, got a motion, Chad seconded, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Minutes for last month are approved. We have 3 items of business tonight. The first one is docket number 2027. Thank Corporation requesting a use variance to allow an auto motor vehicle repair shop. The property is zoned PBC, is planned business commercial, and in the thoroughfare overlay district. Okay, this is the first time the request variance has appeared before the City of Lebanon Board of Zoning. The property is currently vacant and contains 11,000 square foot. It's primarily a metal building and associated parking lot. The building formerly was a restaurant. Ben?
Very good. Good evening, board members. I'll walk you through a little bit of background on this property and this project. I'll let the applicant tell you a little bit about his business and why he chose this location. And I'll kind of walk through some of the details for you. So first off, I don't know if you're familiar with the history of this property. It originally was constructed for Boone Beverage, essentially as a distribution facility. So at its core, the building is an industrial building. The most recent tenant was a restaurant. They spent quite a bit of money, on my understanding, to try to convert that building to a restaurant use, and was that for a number of years, and they went out of business or closed that probably a little over a year ago now. And it's been available since then. So historically, it was an industrial building, or originally was an industrial building converted to the restaurant use. So a little bit about the project itself. I'll let the applicant again talk about the business, but the project, it is an auto repair facility, body shop. The applicant has been looking in the Lebanon market for some time now, both looking at both new construction and an existing remodel, and ended up being this is a site that made the most sense for his business. If they pull up the computer screen, I'll show you some of the improvements that are being proposed. You'll see here, this is the facade of the building, and this is a proposed facade of the building right now. Again, it's a primarily metal building. You'll see the front or the south elevation that faces South Street is this bottom image. They're going to be replacing a lot of materials in that front, such that they are masonry, masonry and stucco. Or EFIS, I mean, and then also on the east and west facades, they'll be doing some of those same improvements to the most visible parts of that facade that are visible from South Street. So making a significant improvement on the elevations of the building. In addition, if you're familiar with that site, there is a curb cut that's just on the south side of the building. It is a curb cut to nowhere right now. So the applicant's proposing to replace that with a new curb and sidewalk, and then provide a nice front entrance to the building that you see here. The big component of this that was really important to staff, particularly where you've got a use that's going to have cars that are coming in for repair, is we did not want the cars or vehicles to be visible as you're passing the property. So the main component of this was very important to us, was that the employee and staging parking is going to be completely enclosed by a fence. The south part of the fence that you see right here will be masonry with a sliding vinyl gate. And then the east and north sides of that parking lot, or that parking area, would then be vinyl fence. So it is completely screened. You've got a gate on the south and a gate on the north for security, and also make sure it's appropriately screened. So that this whole area will be enclosed, so nothing will be visible from passersby on South Street or on Main Street. So that's the general components of the project you see here. Primarily the site is going to remain the same other than those items that I identified. Again, this is an auto repair facility, which are prohibited within the thoroughfare overlay district. So this is not based on the planned business commercial zoning classification. This is primarily based on the overlay district. So the variance of use request was necessary because it's not permitted. Just to walk through a few highlights, again, statutory criteria for approving a variance of use, there's 5 of them. First, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community, and this will not be injurious. We've determined the proposed use is comparable to other uses within the vicinity along this corridor. Use and value of the area adjacent include will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The applicant is proposing significant improvements to both the building and the site. The building will have upgraded materials and the site will be fully fenced so that cars needing repair will be fully screened from neighboring properties. The need for the variance arises from the condition peculiar to the property involved. As I mentioned previously, the property was originally constructed as a distribution facility, then converted to a restaurant. So even with the conversion, the building and property was designed and constructed to house what the UDO classifies as industrial use. So the applicant is proposing auto repair use that more closely aligns with the original use of the property. Excuse me. It's kind of hard to talk with the mask on. Finally, last 2 criteria, strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance would constitute unnecessary hardship. And again, just mentioned the original use for the industrial purposes and then was converted to commercial restaurant use. While it is possible another commercial use might work on this property, the building and site were constructed to house a warehouse industrial use. And finally, the approval will not interfere substantially with the City of Lebanon comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan designates this property for commercial uses. Auto repair uses are considered a heavy commercial use, which has been restricted in the overlay district. The applicant has proposed improvements that will minimize the impact of the use, thus more closely aligning with the commercial land use. So with that, City of Lebanon planning staff has recommended approval of the variance of use request to permit an auto repair facility use within the thoroughfare overlay district, subject to the following conditions, and there are 2 of them. Number 1, that the approval of the variance of use is limited to those auto repair uses proposed by the applicant. Any change in use or increase in the intensity of the use by the current or any subsequent owners will require approval by the City of Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals. And what that means is if somebody comes back later and said we need to increase the size of the storage yard or add additional bays or anything that would increase the intensity of use, that would have to come back here to the board to review. And number 2, that at no time will cars in any level of disrepair or any car parks be located outside of the fenced-in area on the property. Again, try to make sure that we keep all those things behind that fenced-in area. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You said that can you go back to that picture again?
Uh-huh.
I'm just concerned, or not concerned, but questioning the parking. Is that opened area parking, the 5 or 6 spaces there and handicap, that is all?
That would essentially be public parking. If a customer was coming in and parking a car to visit the office, that would be an area of parking there. In terms of employee parking or any cars that are coming in for repair, they would all be restricted to this area that's inside the fence.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Ben, do we require any screening on the rear side of the property, West Main? I know there's an entrance into that lot.
Yeah. They are proposing that fence would extend across that back area too. It
Okay.
would be completely enclosed by the fence.
Okay.
All white vinyl?
Yeah, across the back it is all white vinyl.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ben. We'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll open it up for the public if they have anything to say.
Hello, my name's Mike Moulter. I'm the applicant for the variance, and I brought a color rendering, an architectural rendering that
I think you can lay that on the table, and Ben
that
can
on.
help you, and we can go with an overhead projector.
I think this shows better what our, ultimately, there we go, what ultimately our intentions are, and gives you more of a visual. And
You need to go back to the microphone now, sorry.
I'm not used to your setup here. And I'm at a disadvantage too. I'm not very good with names, but I never forget a face, so I'm again at a disadvantage here tonight. But this is a good architectural rendering of what we intend to do with the property. I know that you're, of course, intimately familiar with that corridor and the properties along there, and they're currently unattractive. In fact, this building itself currently has boarded up windows and I think 4 different kinds of siding and so forth on the south face of it. And as Ben had mentioned, there's an old curb cut and a drive that kind of leads right into the front door. And by removing some of those things, by using masonry on the exterior, we improved the appearance of it. But when you saw the site plan, you saw, as you mentioned, 5 or 6 parking spaces that would be available to the general public when someone came in to pick up a car, drop off a car, something like that. Forgive me as I'm shuffling my mask around here. But my experience in the collision repair business, and frankly, I'm not a young man anymore. I've been at this for a long time. And in automotive history, the collision repair business, or we used to call it body shop business, has had somewhat of a lackluster reputation. And it was, frankly, pretty well deserved. My goal for all the time that I've been in the business is to improve the level of professionalism associated with the business. We don't want people pulling in and seeing wrecked cars. No matter how nice facility you have, if you've got wrecked cars sitting around, they're unattractive. So we want them concealed, we want them hidden from view from the public, because again, regardless, it's unattractive. Vehicles are very expensive these days. You know, I'm sure that all of you are familiar with that. You spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for a car or a pickup truck, and when you go in to have it repaired, you'd like to go to a very clean, very professional, state-of-the-art facility. And that's what we propose to do. As I said, I've been doing this for quite a few years. I have some other stores. I have some pictures that I could share with you if you're interested in that. But what we've done before, and in fact in the city of Fishers, Indiana, we did this very thing. We used a masonry wall across the front street so that it's very attractive, blends with the facility, everything matches. It's a solid vinyl gate, so when a vehicle goes in, the gate gets closed. Of course, sometimes vehicles come in after hours. There's, accidents happen any time of the day or night. We have agreements with towing companies, and they'll have keys to our lot. And when they bring a vehicle in, they take it right into the storage area and set it there for us so we can take a look at it the next morning and do what we need to do to prepare the quote and get with the customer and so forth. So that's our plan for the property. We think it's going to be making a substantial improvement. We think it's going to be, in fact, we know, a very attractive facility. Our facilities are professionally designed, as you can see, with architecture and landscape, and of course we'll be happy to comply with all applicable codes to that end. And that's about all I think I have to say. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
How tall is your fence expected to be around it?
The fence, typically what we like to do and what we've done in the past is we'll have columns that are about 7 or 7.5 feet, and then the fence itself is 6 to 6.5 feet tall.
Okay, well, I guess, but you won't have the opportunity for a tow truck or a flatbed truck to pull in there with a car sitting on it that's going to be left for the night or a period of time, to where you can see the vehicle over the top of the fences.
No, sir, we won't, because we don't have our own tow trucks, so we don't do that. Any tow truck that would be bringing a vehicle in would be dropping it off and leaving. So vehicles, once they're dropped, they're on the parking lot surface.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, I respectfully request your approval.
Okay, well, we've got to open it for the public to see if anybody has any objections or wants to say anything about it. So, if anybody cares to step forward, please do so at this point. Seeing nobody stepping forward, we'll close the public end of the meeting. And Ben, you have anything else you want to say? Does the board have anything else they want to ask or say?
No.
I think it's pretty straightforward where we're going with this then. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve docket dash 2027 with the staff recommendations of 1 and 2. And do you want me to read those then? Okay,
No.
make a motion to approve.
Okay, we need a second.
Second.
Okay, we got 2 seconds, so we'll
Okay.
let Kelly decide who the second is.
Just pick one, Kelly.
Want to take roll?
Okay. Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Congratulations, it passed unanimously. Good. When do you plan on being open?
Well, we'd like to be open by the first of the year.
Fantastic.
Welcome.
Looking forward to moving very quickly. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is Mr. Pratt requesting 5 development standards to allow construction of a new self-storage building. The property is located at 1005 South Lebanon or South Indianapolis Road. The property is zoned single-family and is in the overlay district. And you want to take over from here, Ben?
Absolutely. Get my site plan pulled up here for you. Oops. All right, before you tonight, from the applicant, he's wishing to construct another storage building at a existing crash storage site. As you see here by the site plan, there's a series of existing buildings that essentially front along the interstate, which is just to the northeast. There was an existing structure in this area that you see here that was torn down, and now looking to replace that with this proposed building. They have done a number of improvements out here. We're still working with them some additional improvements, try to get drainage correct. But they have proposed a site that will have improved paved area, and then also some landscaping associated with this building. So this just kind of gives you a general idea of the site. They do meet all applicable setbacks as proposed. And then I'll scroll down so you can see the building, and then I can start talking about the variances. Again, you'll see here, this is what the proposed building looks like. The south elevation that would face Indianapolis Road is what you see here. This is an all stucco exterior with two-tone. The north elevation is the same. The east elevation is primarily stucco as well. There is some vertical medical siding that you'll see here. Otherwise, it's primarily the overhead doors for the storage units. And then the west elevation is where the vertical metal siding comes into play on that side, but it is still the two-tone to match the other 3 sides of the building. All right, let me pull out my notes here. And as I mentioned, this is an existing site. It's been developed as storage units for some time. As the applicant was looking to design and construct the initial facility, we worked with them on some appropriate improvements to the site that don't necessarily meet all of our standards to the letter, but will improve the site significantly over what you see there now. It's not a bad site, but we have a lot more landscape standards, et cetera, that are associated with projects like this, particularly where it's close to the interstate or closer to Main Road. So we did work with them on some compromises to get some improved architecture, some improved landscaping, and that's what you see here tonight. But there are a handful of variances that they were still needing based on just the nature of the site and what they were working with, and what was most appropriate as they move forward. So the first variance is for metal building construction. Again, I just mentioned how the building was being proposed. Three of the 4 sides proposed was stucco. The 4th side is metal. Ironically, you think the west elevation, that's facing something that's going to be seen, but actually, if you look at the site plan again, I'll go back up to that. While it appears as though it's going to be visible from the road, 100 East, that there's actually, as you can see here, there's the contours. The road is significantly elevated from that site. So actually this, if you're coming down the road, you're probably looking over the building. You won't actually see that side very well. And there is a landscape plan. They have proposed some landscaping to screen that side as well. This building is very similar to other buildings in the area. If you're familiar with the new Reynolds Farm Equipment building, that is a mix of masonry and masonry and metal, just like this. Some improvements that are done at Bain Welker, just on the other side of the interstate. There is also a combination of masonry and metal. So this is very much in keeping with what you're seeing in the area, which is a mixed use corridor that includes industrial projects, commercial projects. There's some residential to go further north, so it's a very mixed-use corridor, and this fits in very well with what's proposed along the corridor. So the first request is for metal building construction. The second one is lot plantings. This being in the thoroughfare overlay district, it requires the building perimeter to have 75% building-based landscaping. On a building like this, where you've got overhead doors and you can be able to access those doors, it's kind of hard to put in building-based landscaping and end up rendering the building useless because you wouldn't be able to get to the doors. So that was another one where they proposed some landscaping, and I guess I should go to the landscape plan so you can see that as well. Or zoom out so I can see it. There we go. So as you can see, they've provided some landscaping on the south end of the building and on the west side of the building. But in order to meet that 75% requirement, they'd have to put landscaping in front of the overhead door, so it just isn't practical for a building like this. So they have provided some landscaping, but they will need some relief from that lot plantings requirement in order to be able to use the building the way it was intended. The third is parking area curbing. If you're familiar with this side, the other areas are paved and there's no curbing provided. Everything sheet drains into some dry detention areas and then into a storm drain. So again, this is one where they're looking to kind of continue the drainage pattern on the site. If you were to take a site that's right now sheet drain and then have one part of the site have curbing, then you're trying to get all that storm water into a specific location, into a storm drain. It's just not very practical, again, to be able to do that, to provide curbing on some parts of the site and not others. It's most practical and most efficient to provide the same sort of drainage on the entire site. So they have proposed sheet draining here, which would mean that there's no parking lot curbing. Again, it sheet drains across this area. There's a low area here, and you can see that there's a storm drain to an outlet. So all the water is going to sheet drain in this proposed area. So they have requested relief from the parking area curbing requirement. Again, that's a similar development pattern or improvement pattern to what you already see on the site. The third is the corridor buffer. The thoroughfare overlay district, which actually applies on 100 East and on Indianapolis Road, would require, in addition to the front setbacks, to also be a 20-foot buffer yard along both streets that includes a significant amount of landscaping. So what we work with them here is kind of a little bit of a variation on that idea. So first of all, the buffer plus the front setbacks would require this building to be 70 feet away from the property line on both the west and south sides, which is a significant setback on a site that's really an infill project where it's already developed. So we worked out with them was to meet the required front setbacks of 50 feet. So that building does meet that on both on the south and west sides. And they've provided the landscaping you see here where we thought it would be most effective on the south side, which is the most visible. On the west side, they are proposing evergreen trees. But again, because of the significant grade change there, it wasn't going to be very efficient, or I guess it wasn't going to provide much benefit to provide shrubs there. Again, if you're sitting 10 feet above the building, shrubs aren't going to really provide much benefit. So we felt the evergreen trees would be better there. So that's what they proposed as opposed to the buffer yard plantings. And we think that this is a good infill on this site to be able to provide what they've shown here. So again, they have requested some relief from the corridor buffer requirement to allow them to construct it as they proposed here. And then finally, there's a street tree requirement that requires along the thoroughfare in the thoroughfare overlay district, along both, again, Indianapolis Road and 100 East, they would be required to plant in the right-of-way street trees. Again, in this case, you won't be able to see it real well on these plans, but we've got, it's hard to see here, but Indianapolis Road, you see here, the property line is about 40 feet away, and that's an unimproved area. So I'm not even sure where I'd propose for him to put the street trees. At some point in the future, Indianapolis Road is likely going to be improved as this area develops. I don't know whether that's going to be in 2 years or in 20 years, but at some time this area is going to develop. So in terms of putting street trees out here, this really isn't the setting for it, the environment for it, because it's an old county road still. A little bit difficult to figure out where street trees are most appropriate, so we felt like it was better to put the trees and shrub plantings on the property that you see proposed here and request relief from that street tree requirement. So those are the 5 variance requests that are before you tonight, and rather than reading through 5 sets of criteria for each one of those variances, I'll just note that staff has provided the statutory criteria for approval in the staff report for the record. And then staff has recommended approval of each of these development standards variance requests, and there are no conditions attached to them. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, Ben, thank you. Any questions for Ben?
How closely does the new construction match the existing?
I'll let them answer that question. I believe most of those buildings are metal out there now, is that correct, Ed? The buildings out on the side of it, are they metal buildings? The existing buildings, yeah. The existing buildings are metal buildings, so this with the stucco would actually be an improvement on me.
This is steel building, and the other is coal.
Okay. Yeah, I'll let you guys. Yep. Yeah, so this would actually be improved materials from what you see on the existing buildings.
Any other questions for Ben? Thank you, kind sir. Applicant, care to step forward and tell us a little bit about it, or explain, or whatever?
Okay, my name is Gary Ladd with Ladd Engineering, and we put the development plans together. We have made a slight modification to the site plan. We're showing 4 parking spaces where the entrance drive comes in, and to the left there. Other than that, we haven't made any other changes. I think Ted's just planning on utilizing this to expand his existing facilities for self-storage situation. We tried to delete the requirement for the shrubbery along the buildings because of Ted's concern about varmint attraction and things like that getting in these storage units. So, other than that, Ted, do you want to add anything?
That's, we're just kind of wanting to expand the facility and give the clientele, this part of this building will be climate controlled. So it's another added feature for people. It's pretty nice. We've got one now, and it is it's doing quite well. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, I got one, and maybe Ben is the one. What type of heating and air conditioning you planning? I mean, does it need to be, Ben, does it need to be hidden?
So he was asking the heating and air conditioning units, where would those be located?
They will be in the rear.
They're all inside then?
Yeah, the furnaces will be inside. Air conditioners will be on the rear of the building. So you won't see them from Indianapolis Road 65 at all.
Okay, that's all I got. Anybody else have anything? Thank you. Being public meeting, does anybody in the audience care to step forward? Okay, then we will close the public portion of the hearing. And unless the board has any other questions, I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 5 development standard variances requested on docket 2030.
Need a second.
Second motion.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Bruce Pauly,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
5-0. Good luck, Ted. Okay, we have our last item tonight is docket 2031. It's the Fisher's Construction Group requesting Project Isle. The property is located south of D.S. Smith and west of Ken Foods in the Lebanon Business Park. And they were here, was it last month or something like that? Tonight they're here for some variance requests. Ben?
Very good. Good evening, board, again. I'll walk through this for you. As Bruce mentioned, this was before you last month, and just to explain a little bit about the process that the applicant is going through here. For them, the design of the building, how the building works in terms of their technology, the height variance was very necessary. They haven't actually selected this site for the project yet, so they felt like they need to come in early for the height variance request, because if that happened to get denied, our site would have been eliminated, so they needed to know that as soon as possible before they continued on their process. At this point now, they have filed for both their development plan, a review and approval for the Plan Commission, and then we identified a handful of additional variances based on the site that was proposed that needed to come back to you guys tonight. They do expect to hopefully get your approval tonight and the development plan approval in a couple of weeks. At that time, they will be very quickly choosing their site, because I think my understanding is they're hoping to start moving dirt in a few months. So they're actually getting planning approvals in 2 different communities simultaneously, so that once they select the site, they can just move forward as soon as that's done. So we are obviously still in the running for this project. It's a really nice project for our community. It is a large cold storage facility. As we talked about last month, it's a very tall building that accommodates the technology that they use for cold storage. It's a low oxygen environment. It's all robotics, about 150, 160 foot tall building. So they have the volume of about a 1 million square foot building, but it's contained in about a 400,000 square foot footprint. It's a very efficient new technology that's used a lot overseas, but it's only in a handful of buildings here in the U.S. So it's a very exciting project. As we were reviewing the proposed site plans with the applicant, as I mentioned, we identified a couple of additional variances. This is a much bigger site than the last one, so I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit further for you to actually be able to see what I'm talking about here. It's going to be a little hard to see the detail and then see the entire site all at once. We'll kind of scroll through. I'll kind of go through them all in order here in the staff report. The first is the parking area curbing, and this is a request we get from just about every building in the business park. At least all the newer projects that I've been involved with, and that is that they propose curbing in the employee and customer parking area that you'll see out in the front of the building here. But where the drives and parking area is primary trucking, they have all requested a variance from the curbing, and that's primarily because curbing and trucks don't mix very well. There are a lot of very good truck drivers, and there are some that are average truck drivers, and being able to maneuver trucks in and around these areas is really challenging with the curbing. In addition, because of the large area, the large paved area, it's much more efficient to sheet drain. So actually what they've set up here is they've got an area that's going to collect water in the middle of the site and actually act as their filter before it goes into a more typical detention area. So that all the water from the customer area will collect in a typical storm sewer. It will actually empty out into this dry detention area. It will filter it and then go into a more traditional detention facility. And then all of the water from this area will sheet drain into those areas and then to the south into that detention facility. So again, that's a very typical request we see on almost every building, that the truck parking areas or truck maneuvering areas eliminate the curbing to allow for more efficient truck movement. They have done the same here. The second is drive width. Again, this is a very typical request, because again, relating to trucks, we only allow a maximum drive width of 30 feet. And that is again, while it seems like a large area, when you're talking about a two-way drive aisle, that's only 15 feet in and 15 feet out. 15 feet is a very tight area for a truck to be able to maneuver. So they're actually proposing to increase that to allow some more efficient truck movement. In this case, it is also the employee and customer entrance is sharing that area. So again, the more space we can get for trucks and cars to be able to maneuver and not to interact with each other, the better. I think the applicant would prefer also for the employee entrance to be in a separate area, but I'll get into a second why it's all shown here in one area. So they have requested relief from the drive width maximum to allow them to increase that width to allow for more efficient truck movement. And the third is parking lot perimeter landscaping. Again, this is a very typical request in these large industrial buildings. Let's see if I can find the landscape plans usually at the end somewhere. I better zoom out so I can actually see what I'm looking at. Just a little bit further here. Here we go. All right, so again, what is we've typically seen and what's being proposed here is a heavily landscaped employee customer parking area. Again, with the curbing, they've met all the requirements associated with this customer parking area, employee parking area. With the parking lot perimeter and interior landscaping, they propose some additional tree plantings in the area that's towards the entrance. Where the request comes in for to vary from the parking lot landscaping standards is associated again with the truck area. Again, as much as trucks and curbs don't mix, trucks and landscaping don't mix very well either, particularly on the interior islands. Again, they're asking for relief from the parking lot perimeter or parking lot landscaping requirements, the truck parking area, to eliminate that, to allow for more efficient truck movement into and around the area. Again, this is a variance that I've seen on probably the last 5 projects that come into the business park. The truck parking areas, it's just a lot easier to keep those clear so you got efficient movement of trucks. The final request, however, is a unique one. This one doesn't come up very often because it's just not very typical. And that is a request to vary from our lot standards. The business park, as some of you may know, some may not, is not a platted industrial development. Each one of these lots is meets and bounds. So essentially, as Duke built out this park, they just carved out a lot, wrote a meets and bounds description for it, and moved on their way. So as opposed to, I mean, they do have a master plan for the park, but as opposed to having platted lots that all have frontage, they carved out pieces that were needed for that user. And so what's happened here is we've got a lot that's not adjacent to a public street. What's happened here is the public right-of-way ends just to the northeast of their property, and right now it dumps into the truck drive for Ken's Foods. It goes from public to private at that property line right there. And as you can see, that public right-of-way does not connect with this lot. So at some point when Duke decided to sell off this piece of property to Ken's Foods adjacent, they weren't thinking about how they were going to accommodate the public access to this lot that you see here. Which doesn't mean it's not possible, it just creates a little bit of a hurdle for us in that we require all developable lots to be adjacent to a public right-of-way. So in this case, there's no way to get it adjacent to public right-of-way without converting some section of the truck drive on Ken's Foods to a public right-of-way, which is one of the options, but is not the likely option. That would take a lot more negotiating with Ken's Foods, and just in the essence of time, what we've done here is negotiate with them or agreed with them to allow them to request the variance to allow a lot that's not adjacent to a public street. But in exchange, they would negotiate with Duke Realty and Ken's Foods to either secure an access easement, that essentially incorporates this area of Ken's Foods lots, so they would be adjacent to access and they'd have shared access to their lot through Ken's Foods property, or negotiate a conversion of a portion of this area to public right-of-way so it would actually be adjacent. We just felt like it was more efficient and cleaner to just go ahead and get them the variance from the lot standards in case it's more difficult to convince Ken's Foods to allow that area to become public right-of-way. think it's most likely that they're gonna allow the access easement. And so that's the direction we went. With that being said, I've walked through the 4 variances. Let the applicant talk a bit more about the project overall. I will note for the record that there are statutory criteria for each of those 4 variances that have been outlined in the staff report. And we have recommended approval of all 4 variances, with the one condition being on the lot standards variance, that the applicant secure a shared access easement and/or right-of-way from the adjacent driveway for Ken's Foods to provide access to the subject site. Be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I think we're good. Somebody from applicant care to step forward?
Good evening. My name is John Nerswicki. I'm with Wolpert. We're the civil engineers working on the project. I'm here on behalf of Fisher Construction Group, who couldn't be here tonight. They're out in Washington State, so he was trying to get here, but couldn't make it happen. So Ben did a great job of, outlining all the variances that we're looking at, and everything that we're doing with regard to making this site functional is really just from a design efficiency and an operational efficiency standpoint to be able to get this user on this piece of property. So for the parking lot curbing and the parking lot perimeter landscaping, everything is being done to do low impact design, to be able to take things to sheet flow and to take it to perimeter swale systems so that we're not channelizing flow anywhere, and that we can keep the pavement as level as possible to be able to offer maneuverability for the trucks, as opposed to doing more of a waffling technique with all of the internal storm networks. Drive width, again, being on a landlocked site right now and having to negotiate and work through getting access from an adjacent property owner, it makes those turns a little bit more challenging. So, being able to have some flexibility with getting those semis in and around the site efficiently is important. And then finally, again, as Ben had mentioned on the lot standards, it's just a function of where we're at. We supported Duke going through the CSX Select Site designation for this whole area, and so this is a good piece of ground, and to be able to work something out with Ken's to get access would be extremely important. So we are in conversations securing that, or at least the applicant is. So everything seems to be moving along swimmingly in that regard. So I'm happy to entertain any questions. Again, we are doing this exact thing on a parallel site elsewhere, so it's not up to us which one they choose, but every step is important, and we're hopeful that we can get things figured out.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody from the general public care to step forward? Okay, we'll close the public end of the meeting on this project. Any other questions for Ben before we move forward? Okay.
I have one question. If this access doesn't move forward, are we dead in the water here?
Yeah, I think the challenge here is I don't know if there's really any other better way to provide access to the site. It sounds like their negotiations with Ken's are going favorably, so that's good news. The big challenge here is, you can't really see it on their plans, is there's actually a railroad spur that actually runs east-west just north of this property line also, so trying to find another access to get across a railroad spur is also pretty challenging. So usually railroads only want one crossing and not multiple ones in this area like this. So we're really limited to that one access area, and getting that access easement or right away from Ken's Foods is going to be essentially critical here. I don't see a reason why we're not going to be able to get it done. It's just another step in the process.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the 4 development standard variances with variance number 4, the condition that the applicant secure a shared access easement or right-of-way from the adjacent driveway for Ken's Foods.
Second.
I would second.
Kelly, take roll, please.
Okay. Mark Vandeman,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion passes. Congratulations. Good luck. Okay, do we have any other business to look at tonight? Okay, before we close the meeting, the next meeting would be Tuesday, September the 8th. Yes, Monday, September the 7th is Labor Day. So, somebody make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do a second.
Second.
And a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned until September the 8th.